Well, welcome to Cambridge and another Howard's Orchids video. This is Coelogyne rochusenii. I wanted to film it today because for me this is looking really good. Now if you live in places like Malaysia, Singapore, this wouldn't particularly impress you because if you look on the internet you can see photographs of this orchid absolutely covered with dozens of flower stems. This year I've got 6, which for me is pretty good. Last year I just had 1. The reason is that it's a warm, really tropical growing orchid, and in here where my conditions are what you would call intermediate for orchid growing, in other words minimum 15 in the winter, maybe a touch lower on a very cold night, that's not really enough. So how well this orchid performs in here is very much dependent on how the weather is doing outside. And this year we had a really hot summer, and this is the result, which for me is an absolute triumph. The reason that I grow it, and it is a very large orchid for me because they're very vigorous and they take up a lot of room, they have a fantastic, really delightful sweet scent. Now it first started opening about a week ago. The flower stems, as they develop, they suddenly sort of almost shoot downwards within a week or so and elongate, and then the flowers just start to open and then open all at once. So it's really an impressive display. And it started opening about a week ago, as I said, and within a couple of days the whole greenhouse during the day was filled with this fantastic sweet scent. It's really delicious. They last about 2 weeks, and as they get a little bit older, the interesting thing is that the flowers start closing up at night and then just opening during the day, which is a little bit disconcerting when you first grow it because you think after a week or so the flowers are beginning to go over, but they carry on for quite a bit longer, opening during the day and closing at night. Now you can see, in order to try to overcome the less than ideal conditions that I've got it growing in here, is that I attached this plastic tray by wiring it underneath to the basket. Although they like growing in a basket to get the air to the roots, I had trouble keeping it consistently moist enough. So this is designed just to retain a bit of moisture and extend the sort of warm, moist conditions after watering. It doesn't normally live up here because it's very inconvenient having it here. It means that I have to sort of duck around it. And normally it lives over behind me where it's shadier and it's hanging lower down. But I brought, as soon as it started developing the flower spikes, I brought it out and hung it up here so that it would look its best. And whilst I'm on the subject of Coelogynes, I just wanted to do an update on 2 of my other favourite Coelogynes for scent, and that's Coelogyne eduardii and Coelogyne cumingii. So I'll just move the camera and then we'll have a look at those, because I've covered them in previous videos and I've got 1 or 2 things extra to say that might be helpful to anyone who's growing them. This is Coelogyne eduardii. I was just dripping because I watered it yesterday. It's not in flower now. It was in flower back in the sort of late summer. You can just about see the remains of the flower stems there and another one there. They come up in the middle of the new growths. And I'll just take it out of the outer pot. I've taken to growing quite a lot of my orchids in transparent plastic pots so you can see how moist it is and whether the things need watering, and you can see immediately how the root growth is progressing. Now this is just coming into its sort of phase of root development. And so hopefully in a little while I'll be able to see the new roots extending down around the pot. The interesting thing is that I've had this quite a long time, quite a few years. 2013, that's a very long time, that's longer than I thought, 9 years. And this is all I've got. I've never been able to divide it. I've always been able to sort of grow it, but not really well. So I've never really managed to get the pseudo bulbs up to the sort of size that they should be. They've been sort of middling, okay, and it's flowered most years, but I feel that it really should be doing a lot better. So this year, what I've done is I've put this, just a layer of light sphagnum moss just on the surface of the soil, because what was happening is that the new roots are developing at the base of the new pseudo bulbs. What they tended to do was start growing and then just a sort of abort, and then it would have another attempt, and roots further down would grow down into the compost, and I'd get a reasonable but not really good root system. So what I thought was, basically it was thinking, well, I'm not in the rainforest. This isn't the sort of monsoon season coming and I can start sort of proliferating and growing my roots. I know what's going on, so I'm just going to sort of bide my time and wait for conditions to be better. So in order to try and make them think that they're where they're growing in the wild, this layer of sphagnum moss just preserves a slightly moister condition at the surface. And so far, if I just take a little bit of the moss away, and I'll have to bring the camera closer, you can see that the new roots, as they're coming, are still really healthy, and they're beginning to grow down now into the compost. So I think this year I'm going to get much better root system and much better growth on this. And in fact, that's this just laying a sort of temporary layer of sphagnum moss just on the surface of the bark is a technique that I've tried with quite a few orchids this year, and it's working really well. Now, Coelogyne cumingii is a very beautiful orchid with fantastic white flowers that have an incredible sort of rich scent. Really one of my first rate orchids for scent. It has just finished flowering, because the flowers last a long time. You can just see there's a flower stem there, one I've just cut off there. So literally just within the last week, the last flowers dropped off. Now you can see in both cases, and I've been trying to sort of perfect the growing technique of this for a long time. The main problem is that they have, and this one probably shows it very well, they have a sort of creeping rhizome which goes sort of horizontally along the surface. I mean, you can imagine them just sort of hugging a sort of fallen tree branch. So you can see in this case, this one has gone all the way around here. So there's a sort of the distance between the pseudo bulbs is about 1.5 inches. So they're actually quite difficult to manage, certainly in a pot, which is why I've got them growing in these wooden troughs that I made. And that works quite well. It's in quite a sort of moisture retentive bark mix with some sphagnum in it. This isn't so good. I'm not sure what's happened there. I'll have to cut that off. But as you can see, it's beginning to produce roots here now, and around here where it grew over the side, the roots are growing around the side of the container, which is fine. With this one, has actually done a lot better. I've always managed to get this to grow really quite well, and I've had bits off and divided it quite a few times and given bits to friends and other people. And the interesting thing is that it's cool to warm growing because it covers quite a wide range of altitudes. In here, what I found was I had one here which is cooler and one over there which is warmer. The one growing where it was cooler has actually grown the most prolifically, and if anything, the latest foliage on it is probably the best. The one that was growing in a warmer place actually produced I'll just put this down, the largest, fattest pseudo bulb, which was interesting. So I think probably intermediate to warm growing is probably best for it. And the other thing is that this one has produced 2 new growths from it, whereas normally you only get 1. So I would say if you've got the range of conditions, I would say the warmer is a bit better than cooler. I'll just put this back for a moment. But although I put these, when I repotted this, which was last year, so this is now the 2nd growing season in these tubs, I think really they need potting on every year and putting in a new tub, because although I put them at this end in order to the growth to progress in this direction, as you can see, it's run out of room. And what I think I'll have to do is plant them in even longer troughs. And in this case, what I'll do is cut through the rhizome 2 or 3 bulbs back, and that will induce the remaining part of the orchid to produce new growths, and that'll give me more plants to give away to other people. Anyway, I hope those updates on 2 of my favourite scented orchids are helpful. And until the next episode of Howard's Orchids, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Thanks to all my subscribers, and hope to see you in the next one.